this applies to, does it apply to every company, large companies, small companies, or are there particular companies that would expect it, or other companies would be surprised by it?
Okay, well, this applies to companies which have a turnover of 25 million or more and a gross asset balance sheet of 12.5 million or more. So there would be quite a significant number of companies drawn into the net and required to prepare this statement.
And I think while some of the larger companies, or maybe part of a broader multinational group, will already have things like policy in place, and it's something they'll have thought about before, but for some of the smaller companies, this may come as a surprise to them.
I think it's probably fair to say that for the smaller organisations, the key to this is identifying the obligations that are relevant to them, baking that into the policy, and then keeping that under review on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I know from my experience in revenue audits, particularly with some of the mid-sized and smaller companies, there can be a real deep dive needed to actually identify what the control environment is.
Under this new provision, directors are going to be given a document to sign that says that not only have they faith in the fact that they're compliant, but they've got evidence in the fact that they're compliant.
Well, unfortunately then, Peter, they'll have to explain in the financial statements why they don't have a compliance policy statement. And that is a really challenging thing for a director to do.
But the director says, I need evidence of this. What practically is going to happen? What practically is going to give the director the comfort?
Well, I think, you're saying a file like this. This file could be a couple of page document. I think it depends on the size and scale of the organisation. If you only a few tax heads which apply to you, it can be quite short. And if you have a much bigger organisation, it will be more of a tome.
You're saying this is a totally different level now of evidence that they need, not just assurance. Yeah, and from what I can see, it's not just evidence that the structures are in place, but that they were tested.
Exactly, and that's a key point. I think while people are looking at the date for signing the financial statements as being a key deadline, really companies need to start to work back from that, and because the testing has to be carried out during the financial period. So maybe some of the smaller companies might not necessarily have enough resources, or it's something they need to start to plan now, is who's going to do the testing and when are they going to do it.
From your understanding, what's that test going to look like?
What's it going to look like is going to come back to that overarching comment we made around how many obligations do we have to comply with. And how many different business lines are we engaged in? How many different activities do we engage in? And our testing is going to have to be commensurate against that.
The risk of in regards to your tax obligations is going to come down to like that. How much points of sale do you have? Is it a retailer with branches across the country with a high turnover of staffs with an end VAT liability to consumers in the street? That's going to have a higher risk profile than a company that maybe is a software based and only issues a handful of invoices a year. So I think really it'll come back to the individual company, but and they'll have to take a moment of self-reflection every year that, like, for the first time, it's not just tax compliance that's important. This is almost a new layer coming in on top of that.
Is there any benefit to the company over and above just compliance?
So I think one of the business benefits is that there's an opportunity to standardise process and procedures, and there might be good practice in certain elements of the organisation that aren't necessarily replicated elsewhere. I think also, as we'd all acknowledge, tax legislation never stands still, it's always going to change. So if we fully understand how we comply at the moment, if there's any changes to legislation, it'll be much easier for us to comply in the future.
And just to add to Andy's point, by having the statement in the financial accounts, you give comfort to lenders, investors, your employees, your shareholders, everyone, that you are best in class in this kind of stuff.
Including revenue commissioners, I presume, in the case of an audit.
Yeah, a tax audit, like many things in life, if you're explaining you're losing, and having that documentation to hand and the testing to hand is going to speed up your ability to deal with their queries and the eventuality of an audit.